So welcome to this edition in the Rethinking International Development series of online conversations. It's organized by Darren Headley and Rhonda Grossen in collaboration with VBF. Today we welcome Françoise Le Goff. She has pretty much dedicated her entire life to the Red Cross, to the International Federation of the Red Cross. First, she's been directing in the field, very much in charge of operations in different areas of Kenya, Zimbabwe, South Africa, just to mention a few. And now he's a senior director at its headquarters, the Red Cross headquarters in Geneva. What Françoise will be presenting is a short experience sharing in the actual application of the Universal Baha'i Principle of Consultation. This is an ambitious multi-million-dollar project that she had to embark on, had to apply consultation on a number of different and very sensitive stakeholders. So we're curious to hear from Françoise about her experience and then to open the panel to the questions of the people present. Françoise.
I will present to you an example on how to apply the Baha'i principle of consultation in a project that I have led for the past 6 years in Geneva. And it was to build the new headquarters of the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. And that project, I was very much inspired by the Baha'i principle and tried to see how we can do it in practice in a country like Switzerland and with various stakeholders at the government level, with the staff, or with the local population, or with also business partners and even the constructor and all partners, all stakeholders of the project. So after 6 years now, we are soon coming to the end, and I can really feel that the Baha'i principles were so practical for me. I would like to highlight a few quotes before starting. As Baha'u'llah has established consultation as one of the fundamental principles of his faith and has exhorted the believers to take counsel together in all matters. So for me, all matters could be in my work and see how it works with people who are non-Baha'is. So it describes consultation as the lamp of guidance which leads the way and has the bestowers of understanding. And Shoghi Effendi states that the principle of consultations constitutes one of the basic laws of the Baha'i administrative order. So with that, the Universal House of Justice says, of course, it must be remembered that the purpose of consultation need not always be to arrive at a particular or final decision. Often the aim may simply be to engage in an exchange of views so as to help clarify a certain matter and bring about unity of vision. Further, you should recognize that given current circumstances, there may be issues that cannot be resolved at present and which should be left for future consideration. I selected that quote because in the beginning of the project, I didn't know exactly how it would work, how we would how we would reach decision or only consensus, which would be good, but sometimes it could be compromised. So this unity of vision came out in this project in a very interesting way. So I'll take a few slides to explain the project. So we had a very old office, not adapted to the need of today. And as at that time, director of administration, I had to find a solution. The building was obsolete, very old-fashioned space structure. Renovation would have cost a lot of money without solving any problems. We had security issues. It was not respecting the Swiss environmental standard. We had all kind of problems for like parking for staff, but many other things. So we made a study and we proposed to demolish the existing building to reconstruct. And we got the approval of the board with some conditions. And that conditions were part of the beginning of the consultation, because it's happened, we were situated on a land that the canton of Geneva has put at our disposal since 1959, but there were never an agreement about it. So the board wanted that we have a clear agreement, and that took many years to sort out, because it was at the same time the Swiss government realized that the agreement they had with other organizations was not updated. So with this project, we were the first organization in Geneva applying the new land right of use. And of course, being the first one in a new process, it takes more time. So it took us 4 years to get that agreement in place, which is now the model for all organizations, international organizations, United Nations in Geneva. Second, I negotiated a loan for 50 years at 0% interest from the Swiss Confederation. And that, of course, is really, it's not a gift from the Swiss government, but it's a loan that we will reimburse, but in such conditions that honestly it is a gift. And then we negotiated a construction permit, which in Geneva standard is always 10 to 12 years negotiation to get everything in order, especially with the local inhabitants. And we did it in less than 2 years. So that shows also the whole process of consultation bear fruits very quickly. And then we had to develop a business plan, which is now fully in place. So first of all, we created a steering committee with local authority. That is very unique in Geneva, where the Swiss government put at disposal of organization and United Nations through their permanent mission, a support and a service to support organization in developing their activity in the country. The Swiss government created the FIPOA, which is a special foundation for buildings, and that deal with 38 organizations. So we are one of the 38 organizations and a very small one comparing to United Nations. Then we had the Department of Urbanism in Canton of Geneva, the architects that we had selected, and a few colleagues from the department. So up to now, we have been meeting every quarter to process, to lead the whole negotiations, and that has proven to be very useful because we sorted out so many problems just by consulting with this special steering committee. To give you an idea, we are located, you can see here this red in the top, this red space, which is a property. And between the village of Petit Saconnet, which is number 1, and a green belt, there was no access. So we offered to open the park of the property to the public to be able to connect with that green belt. And of course, the canton of Geneva found the idea really wonderful. The UN Palace is on the right top, a little bit further out of the image. So it's not far, but we are not exactly in the central of all UN buildings. So that was our old buildings. It was a former hospital, so you can imagine not very appropriate for offices. And we had few other little buildings, which was really a shame. Prefabric house done after several disasters. So that was what was the International Federation of Red Cross. However, in the park, we had some beautiful souvenir from the former property. It was a beautiful mansion, and you could see there is a potential to develop something very nice and to open to public through this main entrance. So we decided to demolish most of the building, keeping this white entrance that was quite recent, but the rest was down. And then as you can see in this aerial view, to demolish these 5 buildings, at least the red one, and to have only one simple building but appropriated to that. So that is what it will look like in the end. In the back with a beautiful cafeteria, a conference room on the top with view on the Mont Blanc that we can rent to outside, and this official entrance, which will be quite elegant but simple. So the goal of this office was, from the beginning, functionality, security, cost-effective, image, aesthetic, but among all of this, we choose the major goal will be well-being of people working there, especially because the nature of our work is very stressful. So how can we contribute to that? And we had also to think about a change of culture from an old traditional office space model to new office space, which will increase collaboration. So that was hard work to consult with staff and with senior management what we want to do in the future. How do we want to work? So we develop all kind of mixed office plan, not only open plan, but the possibility to have different modules. And we came to think about to double the surface, increase the meeting rooms from 6 to 22, 2 auditoriums instead of 1, and to have the highest Swiss energy standards. So currently we were having space for 300 people. We moved to 390, and eventually we'll see that the consultation with staff and the constant reflection has helped to increase the reducing walls and increase to 460 workstations. So we were dreaming about different open space which would not look so traditional, with meeting rooms which would be open, nice, welcoming, and changing our former cafeteria into a convivial meeting space. So we had some dreams like that, and we work on it through a co-creation concept, which I put / consultation because consultation is not a word used in that sense so much in our business. We consult people on various ways, but consulting to co-create was new for us. And then we co-create the whole project with staff. We had several processes of consultation. It took a lot of time, but today it speeds up every decision we have. We consulted with the neighbourhood, who at the beginning was negative on the construction project in their environment, and today the neighbourhood has become partner in the project and contribute to it. And then the canton of Geneva has become a partner also to help us finding solution for everything. So the process was to involve rather than imposing, listening to the user's needs, internal and external, and how people can take ownership of their own working environment. So we created various working groups to address a number of issues and to try to say to people, this building is for 100 years. So it will be beyond your own time as a staff. So we have to see in that project the possibility to evolve according to the needs in the future. So there were all kinds of working groups that is mainly based on the well-being of people, interior design, common areas, pure well-being, the park installation, and a mobility plan. So we attracted various processes into one process, into one project here. We had to move all staff for 3 years, and after checking all over Geneva, we had a very original idea to rent a unique office space on the roof of IKEA. And it's the only IKEA building with a roof organized for office. So when we identify the space, it was like this, completely empty and a roof on that building. So with the staff, we decided to see how can we work there for 3 years. And we plan it with IKEA so that when we leave, IKEA can rent it either in one tenant or to several tenants, because it's 5,000 square meters, it's quite large. But the way how we work with IKEA as a business company, and I can tell you very business oriented, came through a wonderful process to consult, to discuss together, and to look at the interest of each other. Eventually, that was the result. So open space, colorful, and making people attracted because it looks good. So after 2 years, already we have been 2 years there, what we learned a lot of things that now we are able to implement in the new building before we finalize the construction. And the key things that make the staff happier was the issue of noise and noise reduction. How can we deal with that? The luminosity and access to natural light, access of food, and that is very important in that region. Mainly people want to have a proper time for lunch. The ergonomics of the office and a space green. So we address all of that, and we understood that this kind of space will enhance collaboration. We learn also that we need space for focus work and all kind of solution for improving the performance of staff by being happy there. What also we had to introduce is what we call Generation Z, which means staff who are born after 1994. And these are the new generation, very connected, who work very differently. If you have children, they work on the computer on their bed. So we have to think how we can do that. So this process of consulting individuals, teams, departments, created really more empowered and engaged people who reflected on how they want to work. So the new design of the building will be different for various teams, like the health department will have a different way than the communication department or the disaster relief team, because we are designing the space for each team. We saw quickly that through a lot of communication, we have removed anxiety because people were prepared. They were very much involved in the move, and they knew where they would sit and how they will organize themselves. So slowly, what was a fear initially became an excitement for a new working culture to do together. And then we had excellent relationship with everybody, including our business partner, IKEA. And surprisingly, they become supportive and give a solution to a number of problems we had. Same with the neighborhood. We had 4 or 5 meetings with inhabitants. We were dropping flyers in their letterbox. They came to meetings. We tell them what we wanted to do, why we needed to do that, how we would like to avoid disturbing them, but telling them for 2 years, 3 years, you will have noises around. And people were so touched that they were consulted that we managed to turn the anxiety or the rejection of the project into how can you contribute to make our neighborhood better for everybody? And you will have access to the park. What activity could you do in the park? How can we share the park? How can we share the restaurant and the meeting rooms? And we realized that many local associations have no meeting rooms around. So seeing they could have access to the meeting rooms gave them really a wonderful perception of the project. And they started to bring ideas and to say, okay, we could do exhibition together, we could have a wellness or a wellness project in the park. And we got a lot of support from the canton and the city of Geneva for this vision of sustainable city and how we can have the population living in harmony with international organization. It's also important to note that most of the United Nations building in Geneva have heavy security around them. So for the population, often they see United Nations offices taking part of the park or reducing access to a number of space. So this project came as opening that idea and making them happy to have a different experience. All of this, it's when I say it's a small project, it's around 60 million Swiss francs. And I say small because currently the plan in Geneva to help other organization is nearly 1.2 billion. So our project 60 million is very small. But so far we are below budget. We started by nearly 5% at this stage, which still moving in and out. We have also potential of sponsors who are now joining the project. But for our governing board and our senior management, that was a big worries in the future because they were afraid that we use the operations money for the project. And so far, this is not the case. The project is completely on its own. We doesn't touch the money for operations, and that reassures everybody. And in addition, because the experience at IKEA with open space has given ideas to some staff, in the new building, we have been able to remove some walls of offices that people initially wanted. And in the end, we have more workstations. So we will be able now to rent space because we don't need all of that. We need 350, maximum 400 workstations. So we will be able to rent that space and cover some costs that we have. When we had recently the foundational stone ceremony, as you can see here, we had so many people from the neighbors, the local authorities, the governing board, all that people mix up, and we're so happy to share and learn and exchange together because the local people had never imagined to meet the governing board of the Red Cross, our president from Japan or others. So it was fabulous. So that here we can see with the Canton of Geneva president and the Federation president, Japanese friend, and our Secretary General from Senegal. So the way forward is that now we are developing a new business model for renting space outside. We are developing a model for cafeteria management to share with the local public, We are also developing a mobility plan, parking management, open to outside, a business model for park usage and sharing the park with people outside, and having other activities that can be mixed with the work of the Red Cross, like various exhibitions, but also the activities that we can share with the local inhabitants. So that is in short the whole project, 6 years, but now we will move back in 1 year. We are nearly at the 5th floor of the construction, so in 12 months we are all back. What I have learned from that process is that the consultation, and here I quote Baha'u'llah, is an agreement to reach a collective course of action, which is defined by people, And we have seen how people were able to express their opinion with absolute freedom and without apprehension. And honestly, when you see staff who initially they say it doesn't matter what we do, at the end now they realize it matters what they're seeing, and we have taken care of their ideas. It's important to realize that the spirit of Baha'i consultation is very different from that current in the decision-making process of non-Baha'i bodies. And I would say that even if this project was not with a spiritual, let's say, a clear message, clear spiritual message, the process is applicable to the society. And I can just now realize how this process with this additional spiritual value behind could transform the whole society. So I really realized that while it was not, it was with the non-Baha'i bodies, if it would be with a spiritual value or principles in addition, it would have had even a much better result. I like also this quote that consultation is a spiritual conference in the attitude and atmosphere of love. And really, for me, the relationship with all partners has become so so sincere, with truth, compassion, empathy, and really understanding, that no problem stay as a problem. All problem was seen as something to work together to find a solution. So it was for me the collective search for a truth, and this is how indeed, with a concern with analysis of specific problem, attaining higher degrees of understanding on a given issue, or exploring possible course of action, consultation may be seen as a collective search for truth. Participants in a consultative process see reality from different points of view. And as these views are examined and understood, clarity is achieved. So this is really was very, there was our reality in that project. This conception of the collective investigation of reality, truth is not a compromise between opposing interest groups, nor does a desire to exercise power over one another animate participants in the consultative process. What they seek rather is a power of unified thought and action. So I think this is very relevant. Few other quotes where maybe we work with governing board or senior management, and sometimes consultation is not applied at all levels. I found some of this quote also supporting the process, where when it was it said, clearly then not every person within an organization will participate equally in making every decision. Responsibility needs to be appropriately structured and defined. For example, there will be many spaces in which individuals involved in a particular component of the work will have the opportunity to share insights, reach higher levels of understanding, and make certain decisions pertaining to their area of functioning. In the case of an organization with a board and an executive director, they will often take decisions without the need to consult with every member of the organization. But theirs is also the responsibility to create an atmosphere in which relevant information and knowledge flows openly, and in which the results of consultation in all the spaces of the organization are conveyed in ways that promote understanding and consensus among its members. So I have experienced that in this project, that some decision we had to move ahead, but others created this understanding and attitude that was needed. So another last quote, it's tell us that through consultation, the maturity of the gift of understanding is made manifest. It is and will always be, he states, a cause of awareness and of awakening and a source of good and well-being. Consultation bestowed greater awareness and transmuted conjecture into certitude. It further asserts that it is a shining light which in dark work leadeth to the way and guideth. And really, this quote touched me because transmuting conjecture into certitude, this is how we had so many debates initially, which become so clear when people work on it and realize they can be taking positive step without losing something, but really contributing. So the consultation paves the path of individual and collective endeavor. The growth, progress, and enduring unity of the community are ensured by its practice. It is indispensable for the ordering of human affairs. Abdu'l-Baha refers to consultation as a cause of great victories, assuring us that it attracted the aid and bestowal of God. So that is really the experience I wanted briefly to share, and I am happy to respond to questions if any.
So I think if there were any skeptics about consultation actually being able to work and achieve results, I think, Françoise, you've made a great case that it does indeed work. It may need a Françoise to help it work. As you can imagine, this project has won a number of awards in Switzerland, which it is generally quite an organized country. So for that to be recognized, obviously was a very, very special project with consultation on so many different levels. We already have a few, there's a lot of applause on the chat, as I imagined. There's already a first question from Rhonda, and also I had a question after that. So Rhonda, would you like to state your question, perhaps?
Yes, certainly. Thank you so much, Françoise. That was really interesting. You know, I saw many examples of how this can be applied to other kinds of work. But one question I had was, you mentioned early on that the consultation process took more time and added more time into the whole process, but in fact, it sped up the work in the end. And could you just elaborate a bit more on that?
I think that consulting local authority, getting people around the table and really addressing openly issues, in general, it takes time to find the right moment where everybody can come together. Same with the local neighborhood, same with the senior management and with the staff. The number of consultations we did at different levels took hell of time. I don't know, maybe have done 50 presentations of the project in the beginning, but more and more I was presenting the project and consulting people, and people knew about it and feel confident, and they were not afraid of sharing their views, putting ideas. Slowly by slowly, we had less and less questions. And honestly now, people say, do we really need to meet now? Because we are okay, and what you do is okay. So there is no need to reassure people. And when we moved to IKEA, we did a lot of preparation with staff about how we will set up the space. And we moved in 5 days. We were operational, honestly, in 1 week. Well, let's say a few little things had to be sorted out after 2 weeks because it was also a new building. But we were fully operational in 2 weeks with absolutely no disruption of work and no complaint from staff. Even they were very happy. They were surprised how practical it was because they had some maybe negative imagination about IKEA setup. But at the end, when they saw the building so attractive and brand new, people were very reassured. So now that we are preparing to move back, we have even less question because the trust has been set up. And I think this is the big difference. Consultation has created trust. And so now we are faster.
Darren has another question. Darren, would you like to pose your question? we're moving concrete ways is what is fostering for.
Yeah, I was wondering, Françoise, if you could share any experiences of when you had to bring people together and they were coming in with anxiety and sometimes conflicting views. And I mean, most organizations don't easily start a process of consultation like this. So did you have any specific ways that you would guide the meetings or ways you would try to encourage people to follow sort of a higher, more noble approach?
Yes, for example, when we ask staff, what is your dream workplace or workstation, the senior management and usually the managers were very worried. They say we will get all kind of nonsense. In the end, we got no nonsense because we share information with staff. We say, okay, we wish your input, but we have some limits, which are the legal limits for the building. And we have also to see financially what we can afford, but really what will make a difference for you. And at the end, we had no nonsense, which means staff were really reasonable, but ideas we got were very good. And managers were surprised. So it shows that when you trust people, they are able to come up with a positive way, and they bring even new solutions we have not thought about it before. At some point in another consultation was about the color of the facade, because the architects proposed a red facade. And then there were all kind of discussions if red is appropriate or it should be gray, and what is more humble or what should be shining in the city. And I can tell you it was 50-50. We consulted all the staff, all the neighborhood, all the governing board, all senior management, the local authority, the Swiss mission. We had a major consultation. And surprisingly, the local neighborhood wanted a red facade. But our senior management felt that was maybe not sustainable or would be perceived differently after 10 years and so on. So we chose a gray facade, but in glasses, and we explain why at the end we selected that. We could not find the 100% agreement on the colors, but nobody is unhappy because they were consulted and they saw the advantage and inconvenience of each side. So whatever has been the decision by the senior management in the end, it was something accepted by everybody because we said it was also beautiful. We could see different approach. And we have then put the colors inside and around with the flowers, with the park and so on. So we created an atmosphere where by listening to the whole discussion on the colors, we created an interaction that was never done with the community. So that was really fascinating. And maybe the message behind consultation should be done really with sincerity. We should be honest and not make a trick by saying we consult, but at the end we decide what we want. So that, I think, is what I've learned from that process, really to do it sincerely.
And Duncan has a question that may connect to what you just said regarding expectations. Duncan, would you like to pose a question?
Sure. Thank you, Françoise, for your presentation. I'm just curious, whenever you introduce a participatory process, you inevitably have to deal with unmet expectations. So I'm wondering if you could share some of your reflections on your own experience that explore how you engage those participants whose expectations were not met.
Well, honestly, at this stage of the project, we have met most of the expectation, because one that was proposed initially was to have a creche for kids, for children. But when we made a study and when we got the cost of it, the people by themselves, they realized we cannot afford it. So we look at partnership with solutions in a different way. And that was the only expectation we were not able to meet. the rest, it's even beyond expectation, because we try to really listen so much on what is needed and how people works. And from the experience, when I show earlier what people wanted here, what was a well-being. In fact, we have introduced all the comments in the new project. So we know now that what matters for the people in SAF in terms of well-being to work will be there. And that we would not have done without the consultation. And staff now are bringing solutions. So when we have an issue, we don't know exactly what to do, staff propose to work on it. And then they are part of the solution.
It looks like we're applying one of the principles of consultation where everybody has a say in the call, because Greg would also like to ask a question.
Françoise, first I'd like to say I've really enjoyed this presentation you made, and I find it that I'm going to be taking bits of your examples and trying to apply them in my current situation. I actually have a couple of questions for you, and one of them is maybe for everybody. But the first one is for Françoise specifically. Do you think that the people involved in this process are actually aware that you applied a specific consultative process, and do they appreciate that, or do you think they were just relating to this this project in terms of solving the problem that they were engaged in? So that's one question: is what level of appreciation do you think they have for the consultative process, and how conscious are they of it? The second one is for Françoise, but also for anybody else that has this experience. I'm currently in a situation where the concept of consultation is probably so embraced that decision making can be difficult, and when that gets combined with a sense of what we're doing is good enough and we don't need to change, it can be a bit of a challenge to get people out of their comfort zones and sort of getting to a point where they realize they have to make a decision that might be uncomfortable, and they'll continue to want it to talk and consult about it. I don't know what your experience, Françoise, has been, if you've ever experienced that. It doesn't sound like it from this project. It sounds like you had the opposite. And maybe others, I'm sure Darren has had that experience in some of his working for some NGOs where people just want to keep talking and talking and not make decisions. So anyways, those are my two questions.
Thank you. Thank you. In fact, when I proposed initially a consultation process or this co-creation process, people were very skeptical, because they say we are doing that in our work. But then when I consulted individually every staff, they were surprised. They say, but does my opinion count really? Because who am I? I'm not a manager, I'm not this. But the fact that everybody individually has been consulted, then every manager as a team manager was consulted, and to contribute to say how you want to lead your team. What can we do to help you better lead your team? People were very interested, because they say, wow, maybe I can get support here. And of course, not everybody knew I'm a Baha'i, and I didn't say that specifically at the beginning. But at the end now, many people come to me and say, but how did you get that idea to do in that way? Or there is something different in the way you are leading us, and you are not looking for power, you are not looking for putting yourself in the front, but why are you doing that? So then I'm able to say, well, I'm a Baha'i, I have this principle of consultation, and it creates really open dialogue on this spiritual consultation, and people are very interested. And I got now much more direct discussion on the faith and how we can put that in practice. In terms of the uncomfort that some staff face, we had few cases where people were really, for example, anti-open space, and those who have been in their own office for years could not imagine how to survive in an open space. I would say those unhappy people with the idea initially, many were surprised that it was not so bad. We had maybe 5% of staff from those who were not happy who did not adapt. And I think they would not have adapted in any situation. These are people, it's their nature, and they cannot even see the positive aspect of things. But through the consultation, they appreciated that it is temporary, and then we will move into our new office. But they have started to learn to be a bit resilient and to appreciate how they can cope. And we put some people in a corner rather than in the middle of the open space. And we took into consideration their specific needs. And then they were satisfied because they were not in the middle of the open space, but they were more in the corner, and they realized we did our best to find a solution. And I think this approach shows that even in a non-uncomfortable situation, we have a way to improve or to take into consideration something which gives them a level of satisfaction. So even if they are not 100% happy, all of them, those who have had various experiences or where they were not happy, we always find a solution where it was acceptable. And because they were part of the solution by saying, is it okay like this, or can we do better? We had, for example, in this situation of atmosphere, and we had a lot of problem to regulate the ventilation, and some people were too hot, others too cold. It's very difficult in an open space to get everybody satisfied with the temperature. So I think that has been probably the biggest challenges we had, to find the temperature which is suitable to everybody. And to avoid this air conditioning in the future building, we have, for example, managed to have windows that can open, and that has made everybody satisfied for the future.
A breath of fresh air, Françoise. Rhonda's a question. Before we go there, just want to double check if Marta has any questions. And if not, Rhonda, perhaps you can pose your question in the meantime.
Yes, lots of things to discuss here, but Françoise, I just wondered if you had more examples of how you saw the Baha'i process of consultation differing from the non-Baha'i consultative processes. You mentioned sincerity, the importance of sincerity in the process, which definitely is important. I mean, we think we've seen consultative processes which people do just because they have to check a box. So if there's other examples, I'd be interested.
I was really reflecting, and in the meantime, it's interesting. I have done the Ruhi book 10.2, specific consultation, and it has really enlightened my reflection, because suddenly I was able to put some words on element. But clearly, the respect for people, for example, is a very important aspect. The fact that you truly listen the different opinions of people. When you ask people their opinion, it's very important to listen and to respond. So every time I got a message, a question by email or through meeting, I was always responding personally to that person by saying, yes, I heard your point, you propose this, it's possible, it's not possible because of this and that. So the fact that we listen everybody was very important. Then another aspect is to respect the ideas and not undermining some views by saying, no, this is stupid, this is ridiculous, and so on. So, but to say, wow, it's a good idea, it's an interesting idea, let's look at it and maybe see how it can be implemented, if it is feasible, not feasible. So we work on each ideas that we receive, and sharing sometimes the most crazy idea, which became at the end something interesting that we could put in place. like a board member complaining about the plug in the conference room not adapted because she is American and it didn't fit with the Swiss standard. And she proposed to have international plug. And we discussed with the architect to put in place a system which could fit all standards of plug in conference room. So that make the person so happy to be respected with the ideas that improve for the whole, created an atmosphere of respect. And then we are getting support, and in the end, people talk to each other about it, and people were happy, and it has created joy and happiness. And one of the quotation of Abdul Baha said that consultation brings happiness and well-being, and I really feel that is true. Consultation has brought happiness and in a true sense, where people feel considered. There will be, maybe that is a good idea for me to develop this element of the criteria and the condition for this consultation. I think I should formalize that a little bit more because it's really important.
I have a question before Martha's, which is about training. So I'm fully aware of just how personally you were involved and very much at the center of this, and very much defining the atmosphere, the respects and the values that were part of this project. But I wonder if you actually trained, obviously we're not in every single consultation. I wonder if there was any training element of training others to these same principles.
So after 2 years in the process, I recruited a project manager and an assistant dedicated to that project. And I really teach them the way of consulting. Initially, they say, we have never done that, we will never succeed. And now they are doing it. They have seen how it works. They have practiced with me, and now they are the one developing it. And the project manager, for example, has been invited to some UN conferences for facility managers, and is sharing this model. And we have created a lot of working group. We have 3 working groups in Geneva with UNOG, one about mobility, one about managing buildings and how we can improve the design, the development, and another about sharing experience like renting meeting rooms, purchase together things, and how to negotiate with local suppliers. That is an element that has come up. Also, one thing I forgot to mention, when we selected the constructor and the engineers for the project, I had a specific presentation for them, asking them to give the best of themselves because they are contributing to a project for humanity, and saying that if this project goes well, it will be no stress for our senior management, and thus they contribute to focus their time to humanity problem and operations. And they were so touched to be given that responsibility that the architect said it's the first time he has absolutely no problem with engineers and constructors. They are on time. They announce when there is an issue. We have lost 1 week in the construction because of weather condition, but no issue based on malfashion or bad work that could be done by some constructor. They are self-organizing themselves to contribute to it in the best way they can. And it's impressive because really they are so happy, and many were touched by what they learned about Red Cross, and to give a sense, a meaning for them was very important. So that is an element also to that I could say, sharing the sense of belonging, that building is for all humanity, and shows them that they are participating to building civilization. So I try to use many Baha'i wording to elevate the dialogue, to give them pride in what they are contributing.
And there was one more, actually two more questions. Martha actually had a question first, and I think Darren then has a final question. Martha.
Hi, thank you very much, Francois. That's been very interesting. And I do hope that eventually we can read more about the whole process that you've used and the different kinds of consultative groups that have been formed. I work in a very hierarchical organization, the US government, and it's been very difficult. And I'm finding that during this, it's not a question so much, but I just wanted to say that just participating today has given me the idea that perhaps even if the management is not involved, there could be a way to make a forum for the staff to have a place to talk and a place to consult together. And that may generate some of that upward consultation. It's given me a little bit of hope, actually. So thank you very much.
Beautiful to hear.
I think what is important here is that by asking all the staff what they could do, and sometimes on small teams or small issues, when they met senior management, they were so happy that they were saying, "We are very happy with the project." So the Secretary General was very surprised. Everywhere he goes, everybody is happy. He go to the Swiss government, people say, "We are very happy with the project." He go to see the local inhabitant when they came for the foundational stone ceremony. All of them came to him to say, "This is the first time they have been consulted, they are so happy," and so on. So eventually the Secretary General was himself so touched by all of that he became he's the leader of that organization, so he took the pride for him. And now in various meetings, he talks about it, which means that the German ambassador now consulted our architects to say, "We want a similar project for our embassy." So suddenly, everybody talk about it in Geneva. It has gone in the press. We had so many journalists coming and discussing. And the governments would tell each organization, "Oh, you could check the model of the Red Cross because that will give you ideas." We had Médecins Sans Frontières, MSF, and Doctors Without Borders, who came to see us. We had discussion with WIPO. We had discussion with so many people, because suddenly, from the local level, staff are talking to each other. We even had, for example, a legal advisor in another organization saying, "I talked to your legal advisor who said that could be a good example for us." So the technical colleague and the managers, and even now in the field, because we opened a new office in Budapest, and they said they wanted the same model. So they apply the whole process in the relationship with the Hungarian government, in the branding for the office space, the colors and everything. So they have taken that as a model. And so now the Federation is thinking to keep a building unit, which normally should have dissolved after the building is done, but they want to keep a building unit to harmonize all over the world our offices and improve the cost effectiveness of offices by introducing some of the either the technical innovation we introduce, or in terms of processes for maintaining offices in good condition at the time.
And I believe, wonderful to see this spreading so widely, and hopefully also to different governments around the world. I understand that, Darren, you have one last question.
Yeah, sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, in part, response to Greg is one quick comment and then a final question. I think Greg was wondering, how do you decide when to stop consulting? Because sometimes we consult ad nauseum and fail to make decisions and make progress. And I really like what you highlighted, the quotation that talks about responsibility, being needed to be taken at certain levels for things to move forward. And maybe there's some guideline we can have of how to decide what to consult about and what, when to limit it or stop it. Certainly some of the issues you talked about are obviously of great interest to the staff, but not everything needed to be taken to the staff, or maybe not more than once to get their initial feedback back. Obviously, your key point about building trust allowed you then to make other decisions and know that you would have the trust and the support of others. But I think that's a really good point that you brought up. My question though was about, usually I like to say in our organization and others that we learn from the positive lessons as well as the more difficult experiences. And there's always some challenges that you can find. And I wonder if there was anything in particular you could highlight that was very difficult, or maybe you, in retrospect, you think we could have done it differently next time, or to repeat it or do something similar. Were there any sort of lessons from the negative things?
I felt that, for example, the consultation of the color on the facade was the most challenging because, of course, it was risky by the sense of it's difficult that everybody colors is very subjective. You have your own culture behind, you have your own background, education, and different age also make that people would appreciate certain styles. So I found out that was the most subjective, and I would have done it differently, which means that, for example, we agree that the Secretary General will be will make the final decision, but maybe we should have followed what was a majority. And we had a kind of majority for red, not very high majority. So it could have been one way or another way. So at the end, how to accept that decision could not be the most consensual. And that I found was challenging. And I was not prepared that eventually the Secretary General would not follow the majority. Even if his opinion was very valid, he had a good analysis of it, and he said, me as a Secretary General, I would feel more comfortable for the future. And indeed, when the process was 100% consultative and majority was taken, that was a little bit a step back, but not too bad. We turn it in a positive way by saying, okay, we will have a gray facade, and it will be the most beautiful gray. And then we try to see how to make it and how to select with the factory who made proposal of something warmer, not cold. And at the end also how to give feedback to people on some decisions. So what we are doing is we had a lot of newsletter at the beginning to inform everybody, and that it was a decision of people to read or not to read. So you make information available, and if people are interested, they are part of it. If they are not, it's no problem. So we didn't take responsibility for the staff or for the inhabitants who were not eventually reading. So now we are preparing the return in the new building. So we will increase these newsletters to be monthly now, so that people are getting excited and we prepare. And since also the return is matching the period of we will celebrate our 100th anniversary, we want to mark the new century of the Federation will be in a new house. And that is very exciting and connected to several celebrations. So we are trying to prepare the people to be happy or excited with this return, and to turn the negative issue or the fear and anxiety into an exciting process. So it's a way that we are now preparing the return, and we start 1 year in advance, so that by the time of September, everybody will be in the mood to return in the new building.
Fantastic, Françoise, and we're coming to a close, and then I asked Darren to perhaps make a closing remark. As you know, Darren and Rhonda are very much organized in these kind of meetings where we are able to share ideas on what works, what doesn't work. In this case, a lot of ideas of what works. So Darren, would you like to close?
Okay, I thought you were going to close, but I misread your. Anyway, Françoise, I'm seeing a lot of comments, people's appreciations, and lots of good ideas that they can take and apply in their workplace. And we might be coming to you with questions in the coming weeks and months. So hopefully you'll be ready for that. But it was really a great example, and hopefully we can continue this good momentum. We'll be trying to have webinars every month, more or less, and the next one is scheduled for October 8th, where we will have Sahel Duki from Honduras SAT program, Asociación Bayan, and that'll be interesting, a little bit of Spanish and English mixed together. So tell your friends, and we'll look forward to that one. Thanks again, Françoise and Danielle, that was really excellent.
And I take the opportunity, as we're talking about events, that if you wish to interact with people like Françoise and other EBBF members and friends on the topic of the transition towards a spiritual enterprise, just mention the next EBBF International event, which takes place from the 12th to the 15th of October, as you can see in this image. Look forward to seeing you there. Thank you. Bye.